Yes! Man, I love these guys. Welcome to Dumb Candy Games' Random WOD Review, where I review WODs and apparently mods for Doom. Today it's time to look at Episode 2 of Wolfendoom Blade of Agony, Shadows of the Reich. First off, when I reviewed Episode 1 of this mod a little while back, I did not realize that when you download Episode 2, you get both complete episodes. And not only that, but Episode 1 is now new and improved with the enhancements that Episode 2 brings. So that said, while I do recommend playing Episode 1 first, there's no reason to grab the old download anymore. Jumping right in, this episode picks up right where we left off. You've been captured and thrown into a Nazi prison, and to break yourself out, you gotta utilize an uncharacteristic amount of stealth. That's right, Episode 2 has tweaked some of the mechanics and improved the UI a bit, and in this first mission you have to really pay attention to the stealth bar here, which shows you how visible you are to enemies. Not only does the amount of light affect your visibility, but also how fast you move and whether you crouch or not. As strange as this mechanic may seem, given the amount of gunplay this mod ultimately has, it works very well. Initially you have to stick to the shadows and avoid all confrontation, but eventually you'll get a knife and you'll at least have the ability to fight back if you make a mistake, or strategically get past enemies by one-hit stealth killing them from behind. As with Episode 1, get very comfortable with the quick save and quick load keys, as things can turn on you very quickly. For instance, I often had problems with stealth kills, as it's tough to know precisely how far you can stand behind an enemy to get the hit. Too close and you bump into them, too far and they'll hear your knife wildly swinging through the air, I guess. Both of these outcomes happen countless times to me, alerting the enemy to my presence, and of course getting myself killed, or at least horribly maimed, at which point it's often more advantageous to just quick load rather than to try and limp through the rest of the map. While this does take you out of the experience a bit, I still felt that the stealth moments in the game were very satisfying, at least when I could get them right. Episode 2 is similar in its design and narrative structure to Episode 1. Doom has always been about mechanics for me, not story. That said, I've never been interested in the narrative of any Doom mod I've come across, but this one actually did hook me and even surprised me with the inclusion of a twist in the form of a double agent embedded in your team. I was shocked to actually find myself invested in the character sprites of a Doom mod. As with Episode 1, you'll revisit HQ after most missions, though there are a few maps that won't give you that respite due to the nature of the story. Mechanically, there are some improvements and changes here that also affect Episode 1. I've already mentioned the stealth bar, but besides that, the enemies will occasionally drop to the ground after taking damage and go into a sort of last stand mode where they'll take slow potshots at you with their pistols. Since they appear to go down before this happens, it's super sneaky. It definitely enhances the danger, but they're clinically dead at this point, so pop one more on them and go on your way. I should mention the inclusion of a friendly character on one mission who helps you take out enemies. It's a bit of a joke really, and he'll almost never handle something properly before you get to it. But on the plus side, depending on your point of view, he can't die, so you don't have to worry about failing the mission because of this. On the negative side, however, he is constantly getting in the way, blocking your ability to back up out of rough situations. This seems like a simple fix for the developers, just let the player clip through friendlies. On the point of the characters, the sprites have been significantly improved, especially in HQ, where you'll notice much higher resolution friendlies. The maps are as cleverly constructed as the first episode, with plenty of secrets and lots of non-linear paths to pick from, which I should say is Blade of Agony's double-edged sword. Even the more straightforward levels provide the illusion of non-linearity, and there are other levels like Mission 3 that are practically open world. It should be stated, however, that these are absolutely enormous levels. Where each mission might have taken me 30 to 45 minutes in the first episode, the missions here take me 45 minutes to upwards of an hour and a half. Operation Stahlhimmel, in particular, is insanely huge. It starts by clearing out some snipers and riding a truck into a train yard where you murder your way past everyone in order to board the train. Then, in the same map, mind you, You'll ride the train and fight your way up through it to the front, GoldenEye 007 style, which eventually gets you to the base that you will infiltrate. Which is when the mission actually gets started, as over the next hour or more you'll explore an enormous labyrinth, setting C4 charges on 10 vital locations. A mission objective I completely forgot about because I'd been distracted with a 20-minute stage between that and the initial mission briefing. So, lesson learned. It's critical to pay attention to not only the mission briefing, but everything your captain and other characters might tell you during the mission. For instance, your compass inventory item will point towards the C4 locations. That would have been helpful to know before I started. Fortunately, that level, among many others, is smartly designed enough that you can backtrack to anything you need to backtrack to, which, as I say, is both the blessing and the curse of Blade of Agony, as I found myself needing to do this a handful of times throughout episode 2, not just for things like objectives, but also for simple things like finding keys. With maps that are this huge, this wasn't always very fun, unfortunately. As mentioned in my last review, the mod involves plenty of fun supernatural stuff, a la Indiana Jones, and even technological stuff, a la Wolfenstein, I guess. And episode 2 turns this up to 11 with a lot more zombie enemies and some crazy robots and mechs. While I can't speak to the secret level in the first episode since I never found all the documents I needed, I did find all the secret Mayan artifacts in this episode. Another throwback to Indy and the fate of Atlantis, by the way. Finding these allowed me to take part in the 2 enormous secret missions here, which I must say completely blew me away. Okay, spoiler alert here, since I definitely wouldn't have wanted this spoiled for me before I played it, so jump to this time in the video to skip these minor spoilers. Of course, it starts off very Mayan and Tomb Raider-esque, but after this brief stage, it gets insane. I just didn't expect anything like this, certainly in terms of the content, but also in terms of the size and the scope. I mean, not only is everything different, new textures, new enemies, and so on, but there are totally new mechanics in place, like gravity and spacesuits. Wow. This secret level makes it well worth finding all those artifacts. Unfortunately, unlike episode 1, I did encounter a few painfully annoying bugs in episode 2. There are a handful of objects that enemies could shoot through, and shooting up at enemies on catwalks was still a little problematic. But nothing was particularly game-breaking until I finished the secret levels. For some reason, some script broke completely and I wasn't able to start the briefing for the following mission. After consulting with one of the creators, I was able to skip to the mission using the console, so it really wasn't that big of a deal. And that's Wolfendoom Blade of Agony, Episode 2. Despite its occasional frustrations, I wouldn't hesitate to recommend it, especially for anyone with a soft spot in their hearts for this era of gaming. As with episode 1, it's an impressive and ambitious showcase for the state-of-the-art in Doom mods, even if it could have done with some slightly more abbreviated levels and simplified objectives, and maybe better visibility when dealing with those damn snipers. And thanks as always for watching Dome Candy Games Random WAD Review, because video games are like candy for your dome.